Let's welcome the Commissioner.
I think I'm mic'd up here, so thank you, Terry, for the introduction. Super excited to be here. You know, I've been a commissioner only since January. Before that, I was a criminal defense attorney primarily and a public defender at one point and for the state of Alaska. And so county government is integrally involved in every piece of the criminal justice system. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted the job of commissioners, because I get to be involved in those issues. And they're top priority for my agenda sort of as a county commissioner. As a group of folks that are interested in this system and going to be part of our system, hopefully, and joining us in this work, I can't think of a better group to be speaking to. And I wanted to highlight a few ways that you can get involved that you probably may know about, may not know about. We have a Law and Justice Council. It's created by state statute. Patrick, I think, believes the chair right now, and he's our Director of Public Defense. You get to hear from him in a second. It really is an interesting group because it involves almost every stakeholder, community stakeholder, from the municipalities, the tribes, law enforcement side, prosecutor, defense. And so we have just added in our new charter revision a couple of citizen spots related to criminal justice organizations. Some of you may fall into that category and might want to submit your application. We'd welcome you to do that. We have another advisory group directly related to these issues called the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee. Thurston County passed a treatment sales tax, which is 0.1%, so there's a pot of money. And we are allowed to use it for treatment, mental health, substance abuse treatment primarily. And we have a set of projects that get reviewed and vetted by this committee, and they give input to the county commissioners of how should we spend this money. And a lot of it is very criminal justice related. So that's another way that citizens get involved in our decisions. We'd always love to see you in court and see the attorneys in action, the county prosecutors, the county public defense. And you're welcome to schedule meetings with members of the system. Myself, Pat, Marianne, our prosecutor is John Thunheim. All the members of our system would love to meet with you and talk to you if you have questions about career choices or things that we do, or why are we doing things. We make ourselves available. That's part of our job as public officials. So I want to introduce the panel. I'll chime in a little bit because I do have a background, as Terry pointed out, in criminal defense, but these are really our department heads for two big departments in Thurston County. PreTrial Services, we have Marianne Clear, and Patrick O'Connor is public defense. They both have years of experience in their fields. They've both been at their work the whole time that I've been in Thurston County in the system, which is going on 13 years. And they're going to talk about a wide variety of topics. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, kind of give you a couple-minute overview of their departments, and then we'll just kind of kick this forum off. I'll start out maybe with a couple of big questions, and then we'll get questions from you guys and hopefully get good discussion going. So I'm going to start, and since you're next to me, Marianne, why don't you introduce your department and kind of what you guys do, and yourself.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep.
So, as Commissioner said, I'm Marianne Clear. I'm the Director for PreTrial Services, and I'm also an alum from St. Martin's. I'll even date myself and say back when it was St. Martin's College, not university. But PreTrial Services, it is a department, an independent department in Thurston County. It is an independent department as of 2015. Not every jurisdiction has a PreTrial Services department, but we are lucky enough here in Thurston County that we do have one. It has functioned under both district court and then later on under superior court, and then now it's independent with a governing board that is made up of all of the stakeholders in our county. What PreTrial Services does is we go in and we currently serve superior court, and we meet with all of the individuals who have been arrested. So anyone who is going to court to have their conditions of release set, we meet with those individuals. We let them know who we are and what we're there for, what we'll do with the information that they will give to us, and see if they're willing to talk with us. They don't need to be in agreement. If they don't want to, we'll still provide that report to the court. We also give that information to Patrick's office and the prosecution. But we do provide neutral information, so we don't work for prosecution or defense. And that information is made up of where they'll live when the court sets their conditions. We verify that on most cases. And we also conduct a risk assessment. So we give that information to the court and counsel, making sure that they're aware of what their risk. Currently, our risk assessment tool is risk to reoffend in the community, and that's what that entails. And that that information is used by the court to help set their conditions of release. That's one function of pretrial services. Other functions that my department does is provide supervision in the community. So if the court should deem it appropriate, they'll order someone on to pretrial services supervision as one of their conditions. That's sometimes deemed by people like probation for people who aren't yet having a resolution for their case. Conditions for their supervision can be urinalysis testing, maybe in-person visits, sometimes phone check-ins. What we often provide for almost everyone on supervision is text message reminders. And so that will be like a reminder for a doctor's visit or a dentist visit. We do those reminders for court appearances to help make sure that people show up for their court and don't get warrants. And then the third function that pretrial services is just starting is our diversion program. And that's funded by our county's treatment sales tax. That's something that Commissioner Menser had mentioned earlier, and that was approved and recommended by the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Board that he had mentioned. We are just starting that program as part of pretrial services, and I look forward to seeing how that will go. But that's what the pretrial services department does.
How many do you have in your department?
My department, I have 5 staff. I am the smallest county department with the smallest budget in our county.
Good evening. My name is Patrick O'Connor. I'm the director of Thurston County's Public Defender's Office, and I think I speak for all of us when I say thank you. Thank you for having us here. So at the Public Defender's Office, we have 39 staff. We have 22 lawyers and then 17 professional staff that are employed by the county that work in our department. And we represent a variety of clients under the Sixth Amendment. You guys have probably already talked about the Sixth Amendment, specifically the right to counsel, which the seminal case there that essentially establishes our department is a case called the United States versus Gideon. So everyone in our county that cannot afford an attorney is appointed an attorney by the court. So we represent clients in Superior Court. That's one branch of our court system here in Washington State. So that's anybody who's charged with an adult felony offense. We represent clients in District Court, which are adults accused of either misdemeanors or gross misdemeanors. We represent clients in juvenile court. Obviously, they are juveniles under the age of 18 that are accused of a crime. We also have an attorney that represents parents going through parental termination proceedings with the state. And we serve, a little over 5,000 clients a year off the top of my head. We are located right next to the courthouse. And as Commissioner Menser said, if you take nothing else away tonight and you want to get involved, please get involved in your local criminal justice system. Come to court. I'm available, as Commissioner Menser said. All our justice stakeholders love to hear from our community because we are, as public servants, serve you. And specifically for the public defenders, we represent this community's interest in criminal justice, and I'm always happy to meet with various community members to get their input on what they want to see out of their criminal justice system. I think we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about some of the initiatives that collectively as our criminal justice stakeholders have been working on to make a better justice system for everyone. And we've made some real advancements in the past couple years. We have a ways to go, but I think what we're all recognizing that in 2019 that the criminal justice system can operate differently than it has traditionally, in recognizing that, at least for our department, we represent anybody who can't afford an attorney, which is by and large the majority of criminal defendants that we see come through the criminal justice system. Well over 90% of those accused of an adult felony fall below the federal poverty guidelines. And well over 80% of our misdemeanors in adult court fall under the federal poverty guidelines. So what we see is a series of themes of individuals that come through our criminal justice system that are in our community that are impoverished, that have active substance use disorders, and also are suffering from acute mental illness. And we have a variety of other crimes too. We have a lot of serious violent crimes in our community as well. So thank you for having us, and I guess we'll just start with some topics that we've kind of laid out. And then, as I said before, when we talked about this a little bit, having this forum, it's really a great opportunity for you guys to ask any questions that you may have of us. So this can be interactive, so we're not probably up here just talking the whole time.
Okay, great. I'm going to just maybe kick off one question for each, and then we'll just open it up to the group. Start with Marianne. You mentioned talking about the risk assessment that is done in order to help judges figure out whether this person should be released, under what conditions. So how do you do that? Like what information are you providing to a judge? I know you call it a risk tool or a risk assessment tool. What does that look like? What information are you collecting and then providing, and what is our judges then ultimately relying on to make those decisions?
So the risk assessment tool just provides a score for the court and the council that are present. Then it's a score for that person, but it's representative of someone with that score will have this likelihood or this probability of being rearrested. And basically it's an information or a piece of information or one tool with all of the other information that they have in front of them for making their decisions. And it's not meant to be dictating to them what they should do with the case or how they should make their decisions, but it's just a piece of information so that they can make decisions. Some people will, there's criticism of risk assessments and the algorithms that go into making those scores. But
what are the inputs, I guess is what I'm...
The inputs, it depends on the risk assessment used. Currently, we use the adult static risk assessment tool, and we'll be changing to the public safety assessment tool. And there's actually information coming out about that, about a grant we received. Thurston County's been selected as one of the 5 national research action sites. So we are really excited to be working with several research partners across the country and the Center for Effective Public Policy to be switching to the public safety assessment tool, because that will be a better tool for our community, and we'll be validating that tool with those researchers. But
Well, just based on what we're using today, what kinds of inputs go into that algorithm? Like how would it...
usually
criminal history,
it's,
I'm guessing.
Age, gender, age at first arrest, the type of charges, those types of factors are what go into that. And they're all weighted differently. And so that's why I'm so excited to be working with the researchers, is because they will help us when we validate the tool for our community know exactly how to weight each different item. And so they'll know if we should weight age more than we should weight gender. That's Patrick wants to chime in.
Well, so this topic here is sort of an overarching, the topic is really bail, right? So if anybody's arrested in the state of Washington, depending on what court, They have to appear before a judicial officer for a couple reasons. One, to establish that there's probable cause for whatever they were arrested for. And then two, after that finding, whether or not someone's going to be released, right? So does everyone here, is for everyone familiar with the term bail, right? So when we talk about bail, what Marianne's referring to, once the judge has established probable cause for a crime, then they have to determine whether or not that person should be released, right? Or whether or not they should be held on requiring them to post bail. And when I say bail, money bail, so through a bail bondsman, right? As everyone knows what a bail bondsman is. So in that judicial officer's determination, this risk tool that Marianne's referring to is really a more objective data, because there's two things a judge is considering whether or not to release someone or not, right? And one factor that the judge has to consider is whether or not this individual is likely to commit another violent offense, right, if they're released. And that's based on the charge that they're being accused of and any relevant criminal history. So that's one, whether or not they're going to commit a violent offense, or two, whether or not they're a flight risk, right? Whether or not they're just going to, if you release somebody, that they're never going to come back to court. So those are the two big bail factors in Washington State, and it's pretty much the bail factors nationally that any court has to look at, right? And whether or not they're going to release someone. And so this risk tool that we currently use, and the one that we're going to be implementing here in the next 5 years, or hopefully should be shorter than 5 years, but Thurston County received an Arnold Ventures grant. Is that a spoiler alert?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It'll come out.
Yeah, it'll come out, yeah. So we're sort of trying to evolve as a criminal justice system with the aid of a fantastic opportunity for this community to have a more objective risk tool for that judicial officer to determine whether or not somebody should be released or not. This is sort of a larger topic of money bail, which we may talk about and maybe later on here, and if you guys have discussed, but that judicial officer who's making those decisions every day, and you can come to court and watch a judicial officer make these decisions on whether or not someone's going to be released or not. One of the problems or one of the issues is obviously everybody's presumed to be innocent of the charge that they're being accused of. And every judicial officer also has to consider the financial resources of the accused on whether or not they're going to be able to be released and make that money bail. So that's something that we're working on as a community as well. Does that make sense?
This is one of the reasons why it's exciting to be working with the national researchers, is because then we can pose those types of questions to them and have them help us analyze our data on those exact type of questions and make sure that we are looking at things such as gender and race and checking those things. And one of the things that our current risk tool does is it looks at pretrial populations and post-conviction populations. And we really want to focus on the pretrial population because that's what the decision is doing, is it's a conditions of release for pretrial status cases. And so it's a good opportunity for our community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk nationally about bail reform, and I know Alaska and California have gone, they've actually passed bills and made changes. And connecting to what Marianne just said is that the concern is that you're setting money bail, then you're basically creating a disparity among people that don't have resources. And they're going to sit in jail on maybe an offense that is not, even if they're guilty, because they're just being charged, but even if they were guilty, they're not that dangerous, but yet because of their financial position, they're going to spend more time in jail than someone with more resources. That's a problem, I think, and many people think. But the alternative of the risk tool, if the risk tool has biases, different kinds of biases in it, then you're not necessarily solving the problem, you're creating a different problem. Like, for example, if your risk tool is gender biased and now you get rid of money bail and you implement a risk tool that has a gender weighting problem in it, then you may have female accused spending more time in jail than male. So you may have solved one problem and just created another. So it's very delicate. People will ask me, do you favor, bail reform? I said, yeah, maybe, probably, only if it's very thoughtful how what we're going to replace the money bail system with, and is it fair and balanced, and not just creating another problem. Cool. Well, we're happy to take any questions about bail because that's a huge issue. Yeah.
We did choose to apply for it, and we were just selected because we were ready. And by saying that, I mean that all of the county stakeholders submitted letters of commitment to the project and are on board. We were already convening risk assessment work groups, looking at our business needs and trying to determine which risk assessment would best meet our business needs. It was the PSA, which the Public Safety Assessment Risk Tool, which is what exactly this tool is for. The goals of the Arnold Ventures grant project align with our goals and looking at what we want to do. And there's a lot of collaboration that happens within the county leadership. And so there was just a 2-year felony leadership improvement project that had happened with Superior Court, Patrick's office, my office, the prosecuting attorney, the sheriff's office, corrections, and they were looking at pretrial process improvement. But with this project, it was very easy to apply for the grant process because simply listing out all of the various projects that had been collaborated on and asking everyone for letters of support was easy.
I've worked in a few different places and in the criminal defense, and there isn't always the level of cooperation and collaboration that I've seen in Thurston County, especially in recent years, between the stakeholders. I mean, prosecutors and defense attorneys, there's one aspect at which we're at war, in a sense. Now, and that needs to be the case. The trick is to then keep that contained and set aside, and then work together on other systemic issues that are valuable to everybody. And I think we do that pretty well here.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, these are common areas of interest in our criminal justice system here and our stakeholders, is that money shouldn't play a role in justice, right? And so who's going to disagree with that, right? That money shouldn't play a role in outcomes. And so we all have a common interest in moving away from that.
Thank you.
I'll throw one more out, and then we'll just kind of open it up. But this one's for you, Patrick. So we get the newspaper, and folks hear about the murder cases, high-profile cases. In fact, extraordinary cases is almost is an actual term of art.
It is.
And those are the ones that you're on the TV and in the Olympian. But that's obviously not the bulk of the criminal justice or the criminal flow.
Right.
So can you kind of outline for folks kind of what, if you know numbers, great. If you don't, give them a sense of like what is the most typical kinds of cases in Thurston County that we have, and what does the kind of breakdown look like?
Yeah, well, so I can give some anecdotal numbers, but as I've been a lifelong public defender in Thurston County, and what we see, and not just we at the public defender's office, but our criminal justice system sees judicial officers, prosecutors, Marianne staff, corrections. Really with these common denominators in the majority of the clients and defendants that we see come through the criminal justice system. And we see the same themes with so many clients and defendants. It's active substance use disorder, right? We have an opioid epidemic in our community. So we see a lot of individuals coming through the criminal justice system with issues that are you would expect to see with someone with an active substance use disorder, so property crimes, things of that nature, possessing controlled substances. And we also see the other real component to our clients that we see so often are acute mental illness issues and issues around acute mental illness. We certainly have a lot of clients that we defend, protect their constitutional rights that would fall into a category objectively that any member of the community would say this is a violent offense and an allegation. But the overwhelming majority of folks that we see in our justice system, and we're not any different than any other justice system in that regard nationally. These are the common themes: poverty, substance use disorder, and mental illness. And so, how do we, as a justice system, we've started to evolve in recognizing that traditional prosecution, incarceration, incapacitation doesn't actually make our community any safer with this population. Right? We can't incarcerate the disease of substance use out of individuals, and obviously the same applies to mental illness. So what efforts can we as criminal justice stakeholders make in recognizing that and try to do some things differently? We have a variety of therapeutic courts in Thurston County. We have drug court, mental health court, veterans court. And those courts, help meet that need. But what we see is a lot of individuals that maybe aren't great fits for that court, but have the same issues. So, we're trying to address those needs for this community and try to meet those as justice stakeholders. And as Ty mentioned, it's a sea change in philosophy, and frankly, it's dollars better spent for our community to try to use that opportunity we have when someone gets arrested and immediately is identified as someone who's houseless, active in an SUD, to try to intervene and not just do a traditional prosecution of we're going to go to trial or these things that maybe I used to do 10 years ago. And, we're all sort of making that recognition that we can do things differently. And frankly, try to make this community a little bit safer in doing so.
One of the things I learned in law school is it's like the criminal justice or criminal law class, first semester. Like, why do we put people in jail? So there's four legs to that. 4 reasons why we put people in jail. One's called general deterrence. You put them in jail, so that sends a message to the community. Hey, if you do that thing, you're going to end up like that guy. One's called specific deterrence. We stop that person from doing that thing. They can't do it while they're in jail, whether it's possess a drug or hurt somebody. We punish, retribution. We essentially think that that's just fair punishment for what that person did. And then there's rehabilitation. We think that, at least in some cases, being in jail and sort of learning your lesson helps get them sorted out. So those are the 4, if you think of a stool, that's the 4 legs of why we put people in jail. Now, for some kind of cases, it's a very stable stool, and those are all good reasons. But when somebody is mentally ill or has a substance use disorder, the legs start to fall apart. Are we really, are we really rehabilitating somebody who's mentally ill by just holding them in jail? Well, that leg's gone probably. Are we really, if someone's a drug addict, are they really is their behavior being dictated by what they see happen to other people? Maybe a little, but probably largely no. So I mean, the stool starts to fall apart, and that's why you see that the actual benefit to the community of incarceration changes depending on the circumstances. This was something that was a minor issue in the past, but such a growing proportion of our jail population are mentally ill or fighting substance abuse disorders that it's become a paramount consideration, and you're starting to see systems all over the nation look at other ways to try to deal with the resources, because you spend a lot of money to prop up that stool, and if you're not getting results for the community, it's hard to justify the tax expenditure. I mean, that's one reason. The other reason is we want to help people. I mean, it hurts families, it hurts communities. Even if you have no sympathy for the criminal defendant himself, you should have sympathy for his family and his children and his wife and his parents who would like to see that person, turn a corner. So, anyway, I'm going to open it up. Anybody? I mean, anything is really open. I don't know. We don't know what you guys learn in your classes and what topics are of interest. So I'll start over here and come back to you. Yeah.
There is a treatment review calendar, and Superior Court does have a staff member that does work with some of those individuals, and on that calendar, Patrick's office handles some of that. Some of the district court cases, they have probation that handles those. They also recently got funding from treatment sales tax to have a individual that works with those who suffer from mental health and substance use disorder that benefit from more intensive probation. But those are misdemeanor cases, not ones that you were talking about, Department of Corrections. And then, Patrick, you look like you want to expand a little bit on treatment review.
No, I just, to answer your question, so when individuals, clients, defendants go to the Department of Corrections, they're serving a prison sentence. And a prison sentence in the state of Washington is any sentence that's 12 months plus 1 day or greater. So once that client or defendant goes to the Department of Corrections, we sort of lose touch with them, frankly. But the Department of Corrections has reentry programs that they employ for release plans for clients and defendants. But on a local level, in our county jail, we've made really good efforts in having our own local, so what we can control is our reentry plan here and programs here. And so we have, as referenced earlier, our local treatment sales tax funds position or positions, I know at least one, that's a reentry coordinator specialist in our Thurston County Jail that helps individuals reenter in the community. And, the statistics, are really overwhelming, but they're also intuitive in that if folks are, reentering our community, either be from prison or a local jail, if they don't have some stability and connection to services within a certain amount of time, and don't quote me on this, but it's about 72 hours, I think is what the study says. If they don't have some connection, then their likelihood of recidivism, quadruples. And so, we may just be talking about meeting Maslow's basic needs, right? Housing, food, shelter, right? Just even starting there for so many folks reentering the community is a need that needs to be met, again, to stabilize. So we put forth the best effort not to see them involved in something else quickly after their release. And sadly, I've seen that scenario a lot too in my career. So,
I think momentum for reentry is building, and I've already heard there's an innovative justice group that meets. It's kind of a subset of Law and Justice Council, and it meets on a Tuesday morning? Yeah, Tuesday morning, once a month. And I've already heard, and I sit in on them. I'm not a formal member, but I sit in, so I know what's going on. And that there's already work with, so like one of the big things is we know someone's going to need X service when they get out, like a substance abuse, and they need Medicaid eligibility, and they lose that. Sometimes they lose it because they're incarcerated. So we're already trying to figure out staff resources to get somebody in there to help that person get signed up, so there's a seamless transition. Now we don't have it dialed up the way we need to in a smooth and but there's recognition of this, and there's work on it from these guys. And there's been discussions between myself and the prosecuting attorney about building a formal reentry system. Pierce County started something called the Court Resource Center across the street from the jail, basically a services hub. We have a great veteran services hub in Lacey where like 80 different organizations come to one place, and veterans can make appointments and just kind of move across the lobby, and I want to do that for criminal defendants leaving the jail, the same concept where they can just walk across the street before they even leave the grounds, and they can get connected up to all the services that may get them where they need to go so that recidivism reduces, they get moving into, it could be jobs, housing, all that stuff, treatment.
Yeah, and not only the reentry portion, and then the pretrial portion, because as we start to move in this direction that Marianne spoke of earlier, in this issue of bail, really in trying to maximize release for individuals, we need to meet them where they're at while their case is pending. And so I spent yesterday morning over in the city of Olympia, and they have a community court in the city of Olympia, and it's really cool, and they do just what's being described. So I was with some defendants that walked from court through a different provider to provider to provider. So intercity transit was there, WorkSource was there, mental health providers were there, chemical dependency providers were there. You could sign up for Apple Healthcare, all in one shop. And these are folks just coming through every Wednesday over there in the city, and those same services could be applied to those reentering. Again, it's really trying to stabilize individuals either as they pass through the system or leaving it.
Question up here. Yeah. So these guys are department directors. We have several more of them. And then we have independent elected offices, like the auditor gets elected by the people, the assessor, the prosecutor, the treasurer. So we call them offices and departments. Their legal status is different, but you can think of them as the pieces of county government. The commissioners set policy for the county. We do not control the independent elected offices other than their budget and their staffing, which is eventually a budget connection. And then the county budget is like $300 million. The general fund, which is our discretionary piece of the budget, it's not special funds that are allocated to specifics, it's the part we actually get to decide how it's spent. 75% of that is we call the 7 big pieces of the law and justice system. So when we do our budget discussions, which is a big part of our job, law and justice is front and center, right? Because 75% of our discretionary spending is connected to that law and justice system. So from a financial point of view, we're directly involved. Now, when it comes to running the system, I'm one step removed. So that's why I say I attend these meetings and I tell them what I'd like to see and what I want. But ultimately, I can't reform the bail system as a county commissioner. That's going to take prosecutor's office and sheriff and the judges. All judges are all independently elected. So it's an interesting, the commissioners are we are connected to every piece of the criminal justice system, but kind of one step removed from directly setting the policy for those independently elected offices. Now, a little bit different for these guys because they're directors under the county commissioners. But again, we set policy at a higher level and they run their departments. But I mean, it's one of the things that made me interested in being a county commissioner was how much law and justice there is to the job.
I will actually also add a little bit to that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only county director that does not go under the Board of County Commissioners. I report to PreTrial Services Governing Board, which I have 7 bosses, and it's made up of elected officials and appointed directors. So I'm the dotted line on our county org chart. The PreTrial Services Governing Board? Our county manager, Ramiro Chavez.
He's in the back. I should have introduced him. Thanks.
He's one of the 7. Patrick O'Connor, our Director of Public Defense. The elected prosecutor is John Thunheim. The presiding judge of Superior Court is Judge Schaller. She's on the board. We have District Court. We have Judge Wilcox. We also have the sheriff, John Snaza. We have Public Health and Social Services. The director is Shelley Slaughter. She is on the board. We also have, let's see.
It's almost 7.
Is that 7?
I think it is.
I think that's everybody.
That's it. Question back here. Yeah. I'll go you next.
That's a great question. I have interns almost every quarter or semester, depending on what school it is.
Prosecutor, I know, does.
Yeah, the prosecutor does. Patrick?
We have law students, usually in the summer. So if you're interested, I'll have cards up here for anyone who's interested. But yeah, you don't have to be a law student to be an intern, at least in our office. So if anyone's interested after this.
And district court also has a mental health court and a veterans court that they also have interns that they offer. So if you're interested, there's a lot of various opportunities. I believe Public Health and Social Services also have internship opportunities.
Here.
I mean, I think it's a great decision if that's what you want to do with your career as paralegal, because I can tell you what I've heard industry-wide and is there's a lack of paralegals. This was just brought up recently at a meeting I was at with the Thurston County Bar Association. There's a lack of paralegals in our community. So as far as a career in criminal justice, we have county positions at both at the Public Defender's Office and the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, specific to criminal justice, paralegal positions. And so there's certainly an opportunity for a career there. If you wanted to work for county government, certainly there's state government. The State Attorney General's Office also has a lot of paralegal opportunities as well as private practice as well. So there are certainly opportunities at not only the county, state, and the private community as well here in Thurston County for such a career. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone over here? Nope. Yeah.
We are just getting started. I actually believe our first client will enter their diversion agreement next week. So it's very new. The staff person that I just hired is going to be doing needs assessments. So she's been focusing on getting trained, and she'll be doing ANZA needs assessments. So she'll be looking at various life domains and determining whether or not someone has mental health or substance use disorder needs, and that's a funding requirement based off the treatment sales tax funding that provides for her position. And the prosecuting attorney and defense attorney will need to be in agreement, and that's who will be entering that agreement with the individual in court. And then those clients will be going through it'll be alternative to jail. So they'll be going through treatment, and my diversion staff will be monitoring them in the community, making sure that they're going through treatment, doing referrals for whatever shows up on that needs assessment, and asking for urinalysis testing, making sure that they're doing all the things that they need to be doing, and that'll be an alternative to jail solution.
Marianne's program is kind of a new expansion, and Patrick, maybe you could talk about First Look.
Sure.
It's another diversion. Diversion is a word that kind of covers. It can cover different types of programs. It's not just one thing. And what Marianne's talking about is a new piece of it. But Patrick can kind of talk about maybe the older forms of diversion, specifically First Look.
Sure. And then I'll yeah, so, Commissioner, let me answer. I want to answer. I want to be good to our promise that we'll listen. So, great question. We do have, adjacent to our jail, we have a triage center. And that triage center was designed to essentially answer the question that you just asked, which when we can identify someone that's acute in a mental illness for, let's say, a crime that's nonviolent or something like that, and not something more serious, that we want to divert that individual out of the criminal justice system, perhaps not even charge them with a crime, and get them connected to the treatment that they need, whether that be inpatient within that facility or at another facility within our community. And we've done that now for several years, but with some struggles because we've seen such a high number of acute individuals that would qualify. We're always lacking certain space for those individuals in our community. I think there's a recognition to your question amongst all the criminal justice stakeholders, the prosecuting attorney, our office, and law enforcement, that there are a lot of individuals that are arrested acute in a mental illness that could be charged, but we'd rather not charge them. It's trying to work with our existing resources and explore new resources so we don't have to treat that individual in a criminal prosecution. But it's been a struggle, frankly, just based on the numbers of individuals that we've seen. Back to the other topic, if I answered your question, we can talk about it some more once we're done. Diversions have been around in Thurston County for a long time, on all varieties of criminal diversions. And the concept is we'd rather not pursue a traditional prosecution conviction for this individual. We'd like to divert them out of the criminal justice system, give them an opportunity to show that this is not something that whatever they engaged in is going to happen over and over, and hopefully if they're successful in a period of time that their criminal charge would be dismissed. Oftentimes that success is conditioned on things, right? So whether somebody has to get enrolled in treatment or what other type of service may be identified that was the root cause of their behavior, if they're able to do that, stay out of trouble, then your criminal case would be dismissed. We've had this opportunity that Marianne spoke of is the first diversion opportunity we've had that's under the county umbrella in adult superior court. And so this one officer that Marianne now has in her department can take diversion referrals from adult felony superior court if they have an identified SUD, substance use disorder, or a mental illness, and divert their criminal case for X amount of months, depending on the case, connect that individual to services within our community, and hopefully have the outcome that results in either a dismissal or some other type of resolution that was identified, but meet that individual's needs. So it's a first step. I think we'll continue to hopefully grow that department in that regard because it's one officer. We have, again, so many individuals that I think would really benefit from this service, but it's a first step.
I'd like to chip in on your question, ma'am, about the mental health, because I think most, if not all, the stakeholders in our system agree that we would rather spend the money and get mental health treatment to somebody that needs it rather than going through a traditional prosecution. What we haven't been able to figure out is mechanically where in the system to get that diversion point. So we tried something, Seattle innovated something they called LEAD, and we tried to bring it here. It was basically hiring, and we went to the Thurston County went to the effort of contracting with a group called Telecare that was going to basically be a mobile outreach so that law enforcement could get a call, see a guy on the street, needs mental health crisis, call these mobile outreach. Okay, we don't need to arrest them and haul them to jail. We need them to get to where they need to go. Triage center, perhaps. Let's call the experts, the Telecare. It didn't work very well, and I won't go into all the reasons. We've tried letting the police just do the arrest and come to the jail and maybe have some mental health screening right there at the point, and that's kind of working a little bit, but the jail doesn't really have the expertise, so we really need to contract. And I mean, it's the mechanics of it. There's been other counties. I've been looking all over the region and seeing what they're doing. Kitsap County hired some behavioral health navigators that they basically gave to the police as employees of the police so that the police could just be in control of them and take them out when they needed to, rather than having to call a separate company and wait, which wasn't working very well. Mechanically, the police need to get another call. They need to go, and they need to do their job, not just waiting around for an hour for a third-party private company to show up and assess a mental health situation in the field. So we're trying to figure out, how does it work mechanically? The citizens that, let's say you're a downtown Olympia business and somebody's in your store like freaking out. You want relief. You want to be able to call, you want to know where to call, and you want to know that someone's going to respond. And so we're balancing that community need with the needs of that person that's having that crisis, with the needs of our budget and how much it costs to deal with it, because we've got a lot of choices. So it's quite complex, but we're really, I feel like everybody is really focused on this, including the state legislature. They're looking at ways to help us with this too. So we're going to figure it out. It's taken a while to get to that point of understanding how important this is.
And I also have an answer for you. Because the PreTrial Services staff go in and meet with individuals who've been arrested, and we're one of the early points for them, we are trying to pay a lot more attention to whether or not they have a mental health diagnosis, whether or not they have a history of treatment, and we provide that information early on to both prosecution and defense so that they can identify early on whether or not they want to refer that case to triage or whether or not they want to call designated crisis responders to look at hospitalization in lieu of incarceration or what options that we do have for that individual. So that's something that we've been trying to provide training for my staff and look at what options are available once that person is already in the door in the jail.
I think we have time for one more question. Far right.
I would think maybe someone in our sheriff's office might be better to talk to than someone on this panel, but I would defer to them instead of speaking.
Well, as defense attorneys, I think we can say that, the crime, based on how long it takes the crime lab, and that could be an underfunding issue, but they have to, I believe that it's a field where there's people needed. So I would definitely not be discouraged if that's something, a passion that you think, I think there's need for those kind of, now how you get into that is something I don't know how you.
Yeah, I'm not sure the career path there, but if you want to stick around, I know someone who would know.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a genius, by the way.
He's, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's very smart.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty quick. One more question. Is there anybody who has a final question?
Oh, it's no different than adult court. We have about 45 juveniles a month that are accused of crimes in Thurston County, and they have all the rights that the adults do: right to an attorney, right to a full defense.
But they're not at a felony level, correct?
They are at a felony level. So juveniles accused of crimes can be accused of misdemeanors all the way up to felonies, the most serious felonies as well, and they can face anything from county jail time to what we call JRA time, which is basically juvenile prison. And depending on the seriousness of the crime, they can actually be tried as adults. So yes, it's just like adult court in terms of, we see kids that are, 12, 13, 14, even below 12, charged with crimes. So yeah, we provide them representation. No, they're not.
Only the most serious, is it called decline
Yeah, there's
here?
a declination hearing. Yeah, so like murder, yeah, things like that. But every juvenile in this community can be charged and is charged every week. With adult crimes. Yeah.
Aren't DUIs automatically also?
DUIs.
Aren't DUIs
No.
automatically into
No.
adult court? No?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked in
Yeah.
different states. Sometimes I get.
I will say though, real quick, and just finish on the juveniles, is we should be really proud as a community on our juvenile justice system in terms of the numbers of juveniles that are currently incarcerated. I don't have the daily number today, but we have continually operated in less than 10 juveniles in our community that are in jail. In our detention facility, and that's something to be really proud of. I can't say it's that way around the state, but at least in this county, we've made some really positive changes in the recognition of brain science and the adverse effects of incarceration can have on juveniles. So.
And I want to just point out, that's not just because we decided to just set juvenile free. I mean, with no accountability. We have programs in place. We have a day program where people come and they do stuff. There's a garden program where they work in a garden. I mean, we have some really innovative programs that does have accountability for these folks, but it doesn't involve incarceration, which is really damaging the younger the person is. So I'm very proud of our juvenile system and how it's shaped up. Thank you guys so much. I think we're kind of out of time, but this has been a really fun, I think, for me, and these guys too.
Thank you.
So grab us afterwards if you had any follow-up, and thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. you.